Today we're going to cover ears. I have done videos on heads, but I have not covered ears yet. So I'm going to show you a technique that I have developed that makes it pretty quick and easy to put ears on your doll. And ears are actually something that I know a lot of people struggle with, and I struggled with them for years. But I discovered a little trick, and I'm going to show it to you. If you break the ear down to just the shapes that you're dealing with, you can simplify the process of applying ears to the head. You can even sculpt the ear on the side, peel it off of your transparency sheet, and then apply it to the ear, which we will cover that. So you're looking at your ear, and you have several basic shapes. You have this curve here, and you have this curve here. So if you think of it as being two C's, this one's more like a G, but if you look at it that way, you have a hole in the middle here, and then you have this C, and then you have this elongated C. So what I have found, I'm going to slide that over. This is a sheet of transparency, a sheet of glass, and then my printed ear is under the glass. Condition some clay, and I'm going to use the larger ear just so that you can see it. If I use the smaller one, it's going to be a little bit hard to demonstrate. But the same process will work for both. You can print the ears in a bunch of different sizes, and that way you can kind of hold the picture up to your doll head and figure out exactly what size ears you want to make for the doll that you're making. And you can do this exact same thing and make your ears either on the doll or on the side, and then apply it after you figure out how big you want the ears to be. Okay, so we're going to work on this outside curve, and the outside curve includes this flat area. So what we're going to do is create a piece that looks kind of like a fish. And we're going to take that piece, we're going to curve it like so. And you're going to thin it out a little bit. You're going to bring it in. You notice it thins. You're going to start, curve, bring it around. And there's your first general shape. Okay? So now that we have that, we're going to work on the second curve, which is this inner curve here. Now the inner curve has, believe it or not, a similar fat end, but it's up here. So you're going to make your slightly wider end, and it's flat, it's not round. It's definitely shaped like a fish. Okay, so I have gone ahead and added a backing piece, the actual ear area. And I have gone ahead and amended my ear pieces. You can see the part of the ear that is flat here and comes around and goes down into the ear is on the thin side. So we're creating kind of a little tail to this little blob animal. Okay, and the other section, which goes down in the ear a little bit deeper, is thicker through here, and then it comes around and it's going to terminate right into that thicker part of this part of the ear. Okay, so this is the ear. We're going to go ahead and lay this part in like this. Figure out if I have enough clay or too much clay, and it's kind of looking like maybe too much clay. So I'm going to thin that down. I'm actually going to cut that in half lengthwise that way. Actually, probably a third. Thin it out and flatten it out. get it back in the shape that it was. Okay, a little thinner on the front end. So we're going to lay that in place. It's going to come around right to there. And we're going to take this stylus tool and we're going to create that divot right there. See that divot? Comes from this side and rolls into the ear. Alright. So we now have that curve started. You're going to take and flatten this down to the surface, like so. Kind of getting the taper of it started because it's got to go down and connect to this piece ultimately. And then the opposite side also has a curve to it. So we're going to take the stylus and come on this side of it. Let's see that little curve where it leans away on that side. And back to the brush. A little smooth here and there, goes a long way. Now we're going to take and lift this piece off. Okay, and we're going to apply that to the doll like so. Okay, and we're going to create that divot right there, that big deep hole, because it is a deeper hole, okay, than the rest of the ear has. Minding our shapes, we're going to come around like that. Okay, now we're going to take this part, as you could see here, we're going to soften that line. Take the end of our tail is going to go down into that hole, like so. And then the rest of it is going to come and sit on top of this part of the ear. Come around down to here. And it's going to lay in like that. Okay. And this part is actually supposed to be up here, so I'm going to back it up. All right. Now this should feather into that. And there's a little bit of a, it's very disorienting trying to do this upside down. So I am going to, for the moment, spin it around so that I can see what you're seeing. Okay, now we're going to taper this into, seam it, however you say that, seam it into the ear on the top side. So these pieces are well attached. And a rounded tool like this one works pretty well down in these little grooves. You can use a toothpick, you can use pretty much anything at this point. Just something to get these two seamed together, and then you'll use a paintbrush later on. And keep looking back at your picture, and if you spin the ear upside down or the head upside down, spin the picture upside down too. It helps. And then seam. I'm going to seam this, and I'm going to fast forward it because you don't need to watch every inch of the seaming. Get your picture, and if you spin the ear upside down or the head upside down, spin the picture upside down too. It helps. And then seam. I'm going to seam this, and I'm going to fast forward it because you don't need to Watch every inch of the seaming. Okay, this earlobe over here, this part, turn the right side up again, has a flattened area, and we're going to do that. Follow this line, and I don't want to be overhanging by this much, so I'm going to lift this like this, right, from underneath. I'm going to put my finger or a tool. I'm going to lift and I'm going to seam that into this so that we reduce that distance and seam these lines together. Okay, and you can take some thickness off again from the outside when you actually attach the ear to the head on the back side by pulling some of this clay down and attaching it to the ear. See how I'm starting that? You just dig in to the ear, take some of the meat of it and press it into the surface of your doll head. And then you take a tool like this, or like Jack's tool from artdoll.com, and you come around and you just clean that up real nice. Okay. And you want to bring that up. That'll all come along as you start smoothing and shaping. But you can now take this tool and bring it around and flatten out that lobe a little bit. Okay, you can use your finger as well on a big one like this. On a small one, you will not be able to use your finger quite as much, but you can use paintbrushes all through this process. I'm going to lift here as well. And we smooth this area before we put this upper ear section on, if you remember. Get my hand out of the way. But you definitely want to try to do it again, and you can use smaller brushes because sometimes the bigger brushes start mashing your shapes instead of adding to them. And if you want more of an undercut, you just take your tool and add that back in. Just pressure on the outside, oops, pressure on the outside and the tool on the inside, and you get more of an undercut. See the ears starting to come together. Okay, and I'm going to spin it around to face me again real quick. Alright, now this part of the ear stays elevated, but when you get around to here, it's actually going to seam into the clay. And I didn't make my base big enough, so I'm going to add another piece to it real quick, just for demonstration purposes, just so you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so this part right here, you see it slopes right into the head. You're going to take your tool and you're going to press in and down and roll that right into the head. Right, that is the point where the lobe kind of disappears into the ear and your pair of divots here appears. So this inner divot, this outer divot is actually slightly raised, and it's pretty, there we go, there's that one, and this should still be a deeper part through here, Use your stylus tools down in the ear. Helps keep everything more smooth. And your little brushes also keep things nice and smooth. Now for this outer divot, I'm actually going to add a little piece of, this is confusing, make that go away. Okay, I'm going to add a little piece of clay, and you can see I'm already, turn the ear around, already starting to shape it like that little nub there. You're just going to drop that in place. Okay. And look at the size of it in the space, and obviously this is too big, so I'm going to reduce it again. Trim a little off. Look again. Looks pretty good. So this time you lay it in and you see the shape is pretty close to what you want. And it smooths into the ear on this side, and it smooths into the ear on that side. So you can seam this here and seam this here, and other than your personal choice on the final shape of the ear, how much extra detail you want to add in there, that is pretty much your ear. Now you can also dig into this clay here by pressing, because the ear opens up into a pocket under here, and this flap is protecting that. That's the actual ear canal under that point. So you can go underneath here and lift like this and push and grab that clay, which is already seamed and spaced in there where you would want it to be. Pull the tool out like this. You put it into that smoothed area, bring it down and pull it out like that, and you create that little nub there and soften your ear back in again in that area. And everything gets smoothed. You just keep taking your brushes, and it's very helpful to have multiple size brushes. You don't want to go at everything with a big brush or everything with a small brush, or you're going to find that you're mashing more than you're sculpting, and that doesn't work for anybody. You can actually sculpt with the brushes. You are applying pressure the same as you would be with your finger. So there's that ear. Relatively quick and easy, and you can reverse this for the opposite ear by just reversing and moving to the other picture. This is why I always recommend that you work from pictures. Eventually you're going to just memorize this process, and you're not going to need to look at a picture anymore. But you may want to continue doing it if for no other reason than you don't end up with Dumbo ears. Big, huge, enormous Dumbo ears, which happens. But for now, this is your ear. And if I had sculpted this on here, I could take my scalpel and just go ahead in and cut that and lift it off of my transparency sheet and apply it to my doll head. Okay, so the final step, which I didn't notice right away, was this area right here was a little too closed. So what I've done is I took the ball stylus and I came down in this area and pushed this back to open it up a little bit more. You have this larger opening here, narrower across here. This here is a little bit thicker, but it's a pretty good size opening. that's down in there. You want to make sure that you open that up. And again, that's just one method of doing them. There are others, but I find this one to be pretty simple, especially if you're just getting started. You just break it down to the shapes. Keep them in mind as you're proceeding forward. Remember the planes. This inner section is lower than the outer section, so you can sculpt it that way. You sculpt the inner part down, the outer part raised, and so on. I hope this helps you with putting ears on your dolls. If you enjoyed the video, please take a moment and like the video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel, because I will be adding new videos on a regular basis. And give me a comment below and let me know how I'm doing and what you would like to see, if anything, in future videos. Thank you.